Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is America in Prophecy, the Land of the New Race, by Francis Vejtasa, F.R.C., an article taken from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 19, Number 4, May 1941. America in Prophecy, the Land of the New Race, by Francis Vejtasa, F.R.C. Is America the beginning of a new race of people which has been in the making for more than 3 centuries? Both prophecy and our reasoning say that it is so. America, as it melts and mixes in the crucible, the different creeds, nationalities, traditions, and even races, is disintegrating these obstructions to tolerance and understanding and paving the way to a world of universal brotherhood. Does it not seem that he who does not accept this evident fact has not as yet been melted enough, is not yet ready to step out of the crucible, and is not yet worthy of the name of a true American? And as the intellect reasons further, are not the European nations going through the same preparation or disintegration, a melting of many parts and combining again into one unit or a new race, a new nation composed of nations? Is not there the same preparation as has been going on for generations in America, but more painful? Tragic are the processes of transmutation by means of wars, ravished governments, betrayed men and nations, fires, floods and earthquakes, and as a result the migration of refugees, rich and poor, a forced mixture of races, nations and creeds, experiencing a common fate, becoming one in human needs and suffering, and at last learning the bond of oneness that is in all. Knowing the limitations of the human mind and its unwillingness to let go of the enslaving bonds of creeds and traditions and the segregating tendencies of racial and language differences, is it possible to think of a more painless process of awakening? And is not the human mind itself responsible for this destructive process as a means of leavening? For evil must of itself destroy evil, and the time of crisis is upon us. Scientifically speaking, there being no proper outlet, eruption or explosion must take place, for the volcano or testing tube can hold no more. The mind that understands the ageless universal laws does not in these critical times raise a voice in denunciation of the non-interference or inaction of the deity in the present affairs of men. For this mind knows that the divine laws, steadfast in the rhythm of truth, will not and cannot change their course at the insistence of erring men or nations of men. As a necessity for growth and evolution, man was given the freedom of will to choose, and if he does not choose to conform to the laws or principles of the all-knowing Creator, he chooses and at the same time begins to create for himself a path of misery and eventual destruction. For, we repeat again, evil destroys itself. The divine principles or laws do not persecute or punish, but remain unswerving and true to their purpose, and steadfast in service to those who seek to understand and conform to the divine plan. Tolerance, gratitude, service to humanity, and obedience to divine principles are the steps to cooperation with the Almighty. And they who know and conform are manifesting the joy of living and experiencing the reward which has been earned. Membership in this plan is attained only by earning it by way of the path of service. In the study of prophecy, we find that the present age has, through many centuries, been preparing for the coming of the Christ and the Antichrist, and then the second coming. Students of mysticism know that the Master Jesus was the progenitor of the divine Christ consciousness in going through the process and experience which made it possible for a large number of people to become recipients of the blessing or power called the Christ Spirit. And in order that a mass evolution might be accomplished at the time which is termed the second coming, through the service and combined powers of those who possessed sufficient illumination to have become channels of expression for the divine plane and servants to the cause. Following this same trend of thought, especially since we know that all things on this unvolved plane of living at least are dual or opposites, complements or affinities, negative and positive forces of attraction or repulsion, is it not natural to assume that since there was the Christ, there should also have been the Antichrist? And that since there is to be a second coming or a mass expression or unified power of the Christ Spirit in expression, that there would also be the massed or unified power of the Antichrist in expression, that is, the forces of light and the forces of darkness contemporaneous. Is there not a narrowness of viewpoint in the expectation that these two powers should at this time of crisis come to us in the expression of two individuals, one representing light and one darkness. Is it not better logic to assume that since these causes of good and evil originated centuries ago, that they would arise now as amassed powers, one mass destructive and the other constructive, constituted of many individuals and having leaders, of course, and that these amassed forces with their leaders shall meet in final battle for supremacy, the battle of Armageddon, that the result shall end an age and definitely establish a new age, and that if the forces of light win, there shall be thousands years of peace with the Christ forces in leadership. As Americans, in us there is definitely the root of the new race, the race whose mission, if viewed, will be the redemption of the world. Does not our inner being respond in joyous anticipation at the magnanimity of this mission as we formulate that silent resolution which many before us have resolved and which leads to the sacrifice of all that is personal in order that a sublime whole might be formulated? We meditate and see in a vision as if within us the sinking of a continent, the dying of a once proud and mighty civilization, so long ago that its recollection remains only as a vague legend. The time came, we are told, for a crisis, a battle between good and evil, and the evil gained mastership and destroyed itself, since evil is mortal. But there is that which is deathless, and life is here yet, listening to the prophecy of the coming of a new Atlantis. That luminous mind, Sir Francis Bacon, European leader of the Rosicrucians, compiled this knowledge, guarded from the days of the ancient Rosicrucians, in the book entitled The New Atlantis, or The House of Solomon, and in 1693 hundreds of leading Rosicrucians of the Old World made a pilgrimage to America to lay Rosicrucian foundations for the future, in keeping with this knowledge and sacred duty. In the book Out of the Crucibles by Henry W. King, Meader Publishing Company, we read in the introduction by the late Imperator, Dr. H. Spencer Lewis, "The Rosicrucians, that ancient fraternity of men and women devoted to the assistance of personal evolution, predicted in the early Christian years that the new world, then only known to them, would become the great crucible out of which would evolve the refined elements of a new race." Of the ancient Rosicrucians, Dr. Lewis states that the crucible was ever the symbol of fires of life which test and try and purify. Always did they look toward the undiscovered Western world as the future crucible of life. We quote Henry W. King from his author's preface. "I believe a new civilization is forming. I believe a great destiny is awaiting the American people. We are even now coming out of the crucibles of the old world, hatreds and ignorance, a composite people. America will someday yield proof of its ancient history, buried with Atlantis. And when this is revealed, the country without ancestry may be acclaimed the germ of all civilizations." It is of interest to note here that in this work of recreation of the world, American women and women of the world are to play a highly significant part. Mr. King states also that a process is being evolved that will salvage the old and regenerate the new until the world is ready to receive the eternal spirit of life, the essence of which has been preserved for eons in the recreated world of America. And in contemplation now comes the realization that we are Americans, you and I and all these others about us. We are the salvaged immortality of the lost Atlantis. And what are we doing, or what can we do in this saving and redemption of the new world? May we not, upon arising every morning, give thanks for the privilege of serving in this great mission, and ask for divine guidance to think and act and deal constructively with ourselves and with those with whom we come in contact. Especially should we consider our youth, for they, being a younger generation, will constitute a more solidified unit in the new race. What phase of expression, light or darkness, construction or destruction, will each represent as a part of this great network? None can stand alone, for as a part of a great whole, each must yield to the force of greatest attraction, be it good or evil. Is your child or my child or the neighbor's child under constructive influences? Has he the opportunity for mental growth along the path of good for the sake of his own evolution and that of the community, or is he dazzled by purely personal ambitions and rewards of commercial values? Does he know the value and joy of serving humanity regardless of differences of race or language, and without expectation of personal rewards? Does he understand the law of compensation or balance? And has he been taught its application? Is he being guided when necessary in the use of his leisure time? Is he aware of the dangers of the fifth column to the life of America? Does he realize that so-called individuals make homes, then communities, then states or provinces, and then nations? That there is no such thing as an individual being, a segregated unit, but that each so-called individual makes or mars whomever or whatever he comes in contact with, even if he does not as much as utter a word. However, before we proceed to pass upon the qualifications of another, might it not be well to analyze ourselves along these mentioned lines? For before we can qualify as a regenerated race, and as a result as a supernation attuned as a whole to a direct divine current of power, we must ourselves pass the tests of the fires of the crucibles and come out purified. To accomplish this, Mr. King, in his Out of the Crucibles, gives us a formula, and that is to sever company with the seven sons of Lucifer. As we present them, you will note that we are still in love with some of them, and that therefore the task of severance will not be an easy one. These are the invisible companions: grading, greed and selfishness, Jalons, jealousy and strife, decipher, deception and lies, Idel, the creator of sluggards, pride and ambition, Drayden, dread and fear, Crastinus, preventer of action by procrastination. Are we not startled to learn that some of these are our close friends, that is, part of our own consciousness, and that they are important strongholds for the dark forces of Armageddon? Expanding further on the prophecy for America, we find that the builders of the ancient Pyramid of Giza, the scripture in stone, which we are told has waited for 6,000 years for a scientific age and a race of people who would understand its language, left their prophecies for the then unknown country of America. Reading from the book, The Symbolic Prophecy of the Great Pyramid by Dr. H. Spencer Lewis, we note that in September 1936, a great change was to come into the life and spirit of the government of the United States, whereby its former constitutional activities will be judged, and from the judgment will arise a new and better form of government based upon motivations growing out of the judgment. We know now that the judgment of our Constitution has become history. It appears also that about January 31st, 1947, a certain period of resurrection and reconstruction will have been completed. And there are indications that a reconstruction of church and state in both America and Great Britain will take place. The Pyramidic prophecy leads us into the year 2001, when it is thought that the world reconstruction will have been finished and the new or golden age definitely established. Since this article leans to a great extent on prophecy, and since we know that many minds have not yet accepted this form of revelation as a fact, we take this opportunity to bring to our support a number of minds which in their magnitude belong not to a man or nation but to the world. We have permission to quote Dr. Alexis Carrel, author of Man the Unknown, Harper and Brothers. This world-renowned scientist looks upon clairvoyance as an art or a science, and worthy of such study as physiological phenomena. Dr. Carrel looks upon true prophecy as the accomplishment of a mind of such magnitude as to have spanned or mastered time and space. Great scientists, including Einstein, have devoted years of effort to bring the true understanding of time and space into the conscious realization of the human mind. Does not the gaining of this conception of no time and space require a mind liberated from finite thinking, a goal awaiting each one of us in the progress of mental evolution? Dr. Carrel states that in time, as in space, the individual stretches out beyond the frontier of his body. He conceives of Caesar, Napoleon, and all great leaders of nations as having grown beyond human stature. They encircle, he reasons, innumerable throngs of men in the net of their will and their ideas. A study of Michel de Nostradamus, born in Provence in the town of Saint-Rémy, France, December 14, 1503, and at the present time credited with being the world's greatest prophet, gives definite proof that mind may note causes and foresee their effects, which may not manifest materially until ages later. The oracles of Nostradamus, published by Scribners 50 years ago, have recently been reprinted by Scribners, including an additional supplement of yet unfulfilled prophecies due to public interest in forecasts. Many of his prophecies now coming true are more than 400 years old, and some will not materialize for hundreds of years to come. His heritage is left in the poetry form of quatrains in Old French. Many of the messages have obviously been incorrectly interpreted and must await the passing of time for correct interpretation. For the proper understanding of this mental and spiritual giant, one needs to be an historian, a linguist, a mathematical expert, an astrologer, and a mystic or high-degree metaphysician. His is a mind worthy of the acquaintance of all those who, in climbing the rugged ornamental evolution, hope someday for their mastership. Another thing, Nostradamus was a master of the Rosicrucian philosophy, and it would take another article to present him as he deserves to be presented. However, in touching upon Nostradamus, we have introduced the much disputed subject of forecasting by means of astrology. This celebrated physician used his knowledge of astrology in connection with his great work as a physician. The etheric or electronic energy waves of the universe were in affinity, he claimed, with the vibratory phase of the human mind and body, as well as with all things of the universe. Under this same principle, he prophesied that the universe was then strongly influenced by the moon currents. From a translated preface to his prophecies addressed to his son, we quote, "Now that we are conducted by the moon under the direction of the Creator, and before she has finished her entire circuit, the sun will come, and then Saturn. Now, according to celestial science, the reign of Saturn shall come back again, so that all calculated the world is drawing on towards its anagogic revolution." The contemporary scientific mind finds it difficult to believe in planetary influences. However, it does know that the moon has control over the tides, and science teaches that the human body is composed of more than 3/4 water. Using ordinary reasoning and pondering these facts, would it not seem that since the body is 3/4 water, and the moon has definite influence over water, that the moon has also influence over the physical body? It might seem that we have strayed somewhat from our contemplation of the new race. However, the new race must be made aware of the need of mental awakening as to what is the truth of and about life. It must become possessed of the true knowledge, and it must become capable of its practical application. In presenting prophecy as a fact, we do not wish to convey the impression that prophecy is infallible. Nostradamus, the most accurate of prophets himself, issued a warning against such assumption. Our Rosicrucian teaching informs us that a prophecy which is 90% accurate has attained as near as possible perfection in this period of time where men are not yet masters, but more or less controlled by circumstances. When one knows definitely a cause, one may foretell its effect. That is prophecy, just as a physician is able to foretell the symptoms which will be the direct result of a known cause. But as men in the process of evolution develop a knowledge of causes and the ability to foresee effects, they may in turn gain sufficient mastership to neutralize the causes and eliminate the consequences through mastership of living and the practical application of principles of truth. In closing, let us affirm our resolution as members of the root of a new race to bring daily into our consciousness the ideal of our mission, the American mission of redemption of the world. And did not our forefathers provide for this daily reminder when they placed upon the reverse side of the great American seal the symbol of the prophetic pyramid, bearing the motto, "Annuit coeptis"? He prospers our beginnings, and showing in the headstone of the pyramid a picture of the all-seeing eye, and at the bottom of the pyramid, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order of the ages. The designs in the seal of our government were adopted June 20th, 1782, and are explained in the teachings of Rosicrucians and Masons. The impress of this seal was placed on the American paper dollar, a currency in daily use, by order of the Secretary of the Treasury on June 15th, 1935, heralding as it were the hour for awakening and attention to our mission, the order of the ages. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.